Kathy. Hi, everyone.
Did you hear we're up to 270 people registered?
Oh, I think that's just absolutely fabulous, Kathy. So I just wanted to just say what a pleasure and a privilege it is for me to be here today with you on this journey. I'm a 40-year resident of Midland, coming in 1980, working for Dow Corning, and also a staunch advocate and supporter of the Midland United Way. So thanks to Holly and her team for their leadership. And I just have a passion for diversity, equity, inclusion, have done this work for a long time. So I just wanted to take a moment to recognize the 270 people who registered to go on the journey. I wanted to just share a quick story to tell you why that is so important and resonant with me. About a week and a half ago, I did a keynote for our annual meeting at a local chamber. And one of the things I do as a speaker is I always try to do a pre-survey so I could see like what the temperature is. And our topic was looking within, recognizing implicit bias and the power of culture. And so, I try to get expectations. Why do you think this is important? What do you expect of me as a speaker? And one of the comments that came back in that pre-survey said, I'm not attending. I'm not planning to come to the annual meeting. And the reason why is because I'm not going to sit and listen to a person tell me that white people are evil. Now, that was not a part of my presentation. As you can imagine, I was talking to a business audience, and I'm a business leader and a community leader. But I tell you that story because sometimes when people hear things, they make assumptions, they make judgments, and they shut down. And you didn't do that. So I want to thank you for signing up. I want to thank you for showing up. I want to thank you for being curious and having a growth mindset. And I want to thank you for going on this journey with us to lift your voice and become an ally and an advocate for equity in Midland and in the state and in our society. So thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Kathy and Holly, for inviting me.
Well, thank you, Kimberly. I think that story is so important. And as I see even on the line here, we have 74 people that came to our kickoff. And for me, I think the story that I wanted to share is really kind of more of an opposite thing, where this summer, when there was so much that was so at front of mind with things that were happening in the media and things that we were hearing about happening all around our country, I ended up having some really, really powerful conversations with my daughter, who's a senior in college. And my daughter was overwhelmed. And she was overwhelmed with wanting to learn, with wanting to grow, with wanting to make a difference. I mean, since she was a child, that's been her heart. And this weighed on her so heavily. And I was kind of fearing that she would quit everything and just go and travel and join movements, not fearing because it was a bad thing, but I think she was really losing balance. And we started to think about what's really important to her, and what's important to her are her relationships and her experience of making a difference with the people that are around her. And that's where she really has great impact because of her heart and because of her compassion. And so we were able to reframe that and kind of pull her back from that real sense of anxiety and overwhelm for not being able to do everything, to really getting to the point where what can you do personally, and what can you then do to impact the people around you, like your family and the people that you care about. And she's an RA, so the people on her floor, how can she start to really open space for great conversations, and knowing that that has a ripple impact that will matter in the world. And so I think it's interesting that, somewhere in between is maybe where many of us are on the call here. There may be some resistance a little bit to a little discomfort. What am I going to get myself into here? Do I really want to engage in this work? To how can I keep balance in this work, because it is so deeply So that's what we're going to be taking a look at here today. We've got about 25 minutes that we're going to just go over a couple of things, and I'm going to share my screen again with you so that we can follow along. And again, if you do have any questions, we can put them in the chat. If there's ones that we are not, or there's a Q&A section on here too, I think you can put questions there. Either way, we'll try and find them. But what we know is that, boy, I lost my train of thought because I read something. How many attendees do we currently have online? Right now, I think we have someone asked that question about 79, which is very exciting. But what we know is that we really want to start out, I believe, with an important land acknowledgement, in that it's really with this immense gratitude and respect that we would like to acknowledge that we're on the land of the Anishinaabe, the Mississauga, and the Sauk people. And this is something that I saw in a presentation from a community foundation earlier in the year, and I found it really powerful. And I was in Australia last summer, and this was part of every single presentation of the conference I was in. And so I really started to take a look at that. And this is for Midland area here. And what was really cool is that they also, this is the map of what it looks like. But if you are not from Midland, you can enter in here your zip code to that number if you'd like to. Or you can put this into a website, and you can then find out what land you are on, because that really is important. I am going to ask, I think Haley is going to put this in the chat for us too, so that we can have this. And after I learned this, I ended up sharing it with my siblings and with my mom and my cousin, who all really live in kind of different parts of the country. And we just had a really nice conversation that honestly we have never had before. And my younger sister is 49 years old. So in 49 years, we have not had a conversation about this. And it was really interesting. She lives in Georgia, and to see the different land and to be able to honor that was really cool. It was a great experience. So I encourage you to share this with other people because it's important and it can spark good conversation. When we get into what we're going to be taking a look at here in this quick half hour, we're looking at why are we doing this 10-day equity challenge, and what are some expectations that we might have for ourselves, and things that you can expect from us as the facilitators and with the United Way that's organizing this challenge. How does it work? So we'll get into the logistics. We'll also start to do a little bit of aspirational brainstorming here. And we'll then have a little summit preview of our final day of our 10-day summit. What are our objectives overall? We're going to take a look at our identities. That's one thing that many people have been thinking about, but also many people have never probably really thought about this. And what's the awareness of how our identities really impact our lives? And so we hope to increase this understanding then of how we can challenge assumptions, not only just about our identities, but about identities that we, in assumptions we make about other people's identities. Through the course of this challenge, we really hope to increase community. Maybe it's not with the 86 people on the line or the 270 people that are registered or the 58 different organizations that are represented in this challenge, but each individual person has an opportunity to enhance community through their experience in this challenge. And yes, there may be some workplaces, there's multiple people from different workplaces that can start to have community conversations, but ultimately just even working on this at our own individual level can really enhance the communities that we're a part of. And so we hope to shift then behavior through learning and growth, and ultimately inspire action. And our final summit is really about that. How can we inspire action in ways that really serve us in our role in this world, so that we can really make a difference and help to make our world a better place? Those are our objectives. The Equity Challenge was originally developed by Dr. Eddie Moore, Dr. Eddie Moore Jr., and Dr. Marguerite Pennock Parks and Debbie Irving. And from that, it was adapted by Food Solutions New England, and then Michigan got a hold of it. We have a great state. And so our Michigan Association of United Ways really adapted the challenge and centered some of the material that you'll see to Michigan specifically. And then our United Way piloted this 21-day challenge with Corteva in late 2020. and really then looked at how can we best modify this for a community to engage in a way that meets our needs. And in the United Way decided to bring it down to a 10-day challenge. Just a quick 2 weeks that we can really dig into this work, knowing that this isn't the only thing. This is just the beginning of an ongoing conversation in our community that the United Way is going to be hosting, but also along the journey of some really important conversations that have already been happening in our community for many years, actually, and maybe intensified for some of us just in the last year or so. So we have this community 10-day challenge that we're going to take a look at. And what can you expect from that? Well, we first want to know what you can expect from that. So one of the things we want to do with you here quickly is have you think about what 3 words best describe what you would like to get from this challenge. And what you'll do for this particular poll, it's kind of a nifty little feature that an organization called Menti has, is if you open up your camera, if you have your phone with you, and you hover it over the QR code, you will open up a server that takes you for our first question. And you can enter in your 3 answers to what 3 words best describe what you would like to get from this challenge. If you'd rather open it up on a browser, then you can open it on menti.com and you can put in the code that you'll see here. But when I switch the screen here in about 10 seconds, it'll be at the top of this next screen. And we're just going to start to look at collectively as a group, what are some of the things that we would like to get out of this challenge? We'll see a nice word cloud populating. So again, you can either scan your QR code or you can go to menti.com and enter the code that you will start to see. Yes. All right. And again, menti.com, and the code is at the top if you're still getting in. But let's take a look and just ponder some of the words that are coming in here. Kimberly, what's standing out to you?
It looks like a lot of focus on understanding, growth, and awareness. And I saw action in there. Perspective. Inspiration.
We're going to take about maybe 15 more seconds or so. We have about 48 people that have populated it. And if you're having trouble with the technology, this is a no judgment zone, no worries. You can just sit back and watch the beautiful word cloud. See some other cool words here: momentum, bring positive change, getting it right, language, tools. All right, thank you. Thank you for participating on that. You can keep populating this if you'd like to, if you really want to capture those expectations you have for yourself. In about 2 weeks, we'll revisit this and we'll see if you, looking at this word cloud, are feeling like you've accomplished some of these goals. So keep in mind, you're going to see this again. So if you didn't get your answers on here, there's still time to do it even when I go back to the PowerPoint. One of the things we wanted to highlight for you is what we're really talking about here. And this vision of equity, Kimberly has said she's used this particular vision in some presentations. Would you like to speak to it, or would you rather me?
Oh, I can do it, Kathy. Thanks for the opportunity. You see 4 panels here, and this really speaks to why equity is so important. So the first panel really speaks to what the reality may feel like today and is today systemically, you know, when folks are looking for equity. The second slide really speaks to equality. So back in civil rights, equality was a term that we used a lot back in the 60s, and it was about the law. So it was equal rights under law. But when we think of the term equality, you know, what we're seeing there is if you give everyone exactly the same thing, it doesn't necessarily satisfy the need that the individual may have, given sort of where they're starting from or how they're abled as a person, if you will. Whereas the third panel really speaks to equity, which says that you give people the resources that they need to be able to bring their gifts and tools and their strengths forward to society. And of course, the last panel really speaks to if there were no barriers at all, that it would be sort of liberation for us, if you will. So I think we've just moved historically from thinking about equal rights under the law to equity as the reality has played out in the years following the civil rights changes back in the 60s.
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. I appreciate that. Equity. And what are we going to do then in this challenge? Well, what you're going to end up doing is you will be getting in this 10-day equity challenge an email every day. And that email is going to give you some opportunities to engage in some work and some personal work around this idea of equity and how we can create more of it in our world. There'll be 3 options always. One will be typically something that you would read and that you would learn about if that's your method of learning that you prefer. Another one would be maybe through listening, and a final one through watching. And it's just a beautiful challenge that's been developed for us that I've really enjoyed digging into, and I hope you do too. There's also a reflection that you'll get where you can kind of keep track of your learnings as you go, or some of the things that really struck you. And that, again, sometimes that writing or that journaling can help us deepen our learning as well. But I think some expectations that I wanted to just get out there for us that we can all maybe try and keep in mind as we're going through this. First of all, to engage is going to be important. And so to really learn from this, to do this while we are also, say, watching our favorite show at 8 o'clock at night, we're not going to get the learning as if we really dove in and maybe set aside a specific, maybe even just 15 minutes per day. And some days it's only 5 minutes, and some days it's just thinking about it. But really trying to engage in that learning is going to be really helpful to get the most out of it. The second thing I think that's important to know is that we can expect to be uncomfortable. This kind of work is certainly uncomfortable, as I mentioned with my daughter, and doing that work, which is ongoing, but certainly really intensified over the summer, was some really uncomfortable and challenging conversations and personal work that both of us were thinking about and talking about, as well as with some other members of our family too. You can also expect, and we would hope, that you would exercise self-compassion in that. One of the things that can easily come from this kind of work is a sense of shame and a sense of anger and frustration, but holding space for yourself that you're learning and that we are all on a journey can be a really helpful tool. And so doing some of these things up here, like patience and accepting and holding, open, reflecting, those kinds of words can be really important to keep in front of mind as we're going through this kind of work. And knowing that it takes practice. At the end of 10 days, we will have not solved the world's problems. In fact, we just might be exposed to more of them. And that, of course, is maybe part of the learning. But knowing that this is a journey, and that we're all, as Kimberly mentioned so beautifully earlier, that we're all learning and growing through this process is really important to hold. And if we do it together, we can certainly amplify our learning and amplify our impact. And so starting to have curious conversations with people, if you haven't yet, or continuing those curious conversations and supporting each other in this work can be really so important. And again, remembering we're all a work in progress. So keeping some of these words to front of mind, that we really want to have hope that we can create progress, that we do have some responsibility in this work, and that we can really work toward a more peaceful society. Kimberly, did you want to speak to shame at all here? The other story you were telling me about earlier, I think, was really powerful.
Yeah, so this year for all of us has been very challenging. We've had COVID, and in Midland locally, we had the flood, and then we had George Floyd being killed, and we've all sort of lived, we've had the political backdrop. So we've had all kinds of things going on at a national and state and local level. And Brene Brown tells us that shame corrodes the very part of us that we believe are capable of change. So I will just tell you what my experience had been, especially coming off of George Floyd's killing. And I was just finishing up the certificate in well-being that was offered in Midland that week. We were in our last week and had to do presentation. So, you know, was sort of in between something horrendous happening in the world and having to get some work done. And then people started to reach out to me, and especially some of my white colleagues began to reach out to me to see how I was doing, to see how I was feeling. And I really appreciated that, because sometimes it can be lonely if people don't want or don't know how to have conversations or don't feel safe having conversations with someone who is different. Could be different color, different ethnicities, could be somebody with a disability, could be LGBTQ, it could be anything, could be a female, right? If you're a male, where you're having those conversations and you don't exactly know how to have them. So sometimes we just sit in silence and in pain, and we don't have conversations. So I appreciated my friends reaching out. And one of them said to me, I just wanted to check on you. And she said, I can't imagine how much pain you're in. And she was referencing the death of George Floyd. And I kind of said in her words, and I told her, I said, I'm not in pain. I said, I have other feelings about it, but pain is not what I'm feeling. But I think it was pain is what she was feeling. And to reference this slide, maybe some shame, right? And what we talked about is that everybody's in a different space on this continuum. And I grew up watching civil rights, and I was 10 in 1968 when Martin Luther King was killed. So I have a certain perspective about it. And then I'm African American and I'm a female. And so my genre, the time I grew up, what I saw is going to shape my experiences. And I have benefited from all the gains that Martin Luther King fought for here in Midland. So, but what we talked about was that she was feeling pain, and she was at a different place than I was, because these things were now up close and personal to all of us. So I just wanted to tell that story, both from the standpoint of how we're all having feelings about this, and all our feelings may be different depending on where we are sort of in our learning process about this, and that we shouldn't feel ashamed about that. I have a favorite slide that I like to show, and it's a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou, and it says, you do the best you can till you know better. And when you know better, just do better.
That's beautiful. Thank you. All right. So now let's dig into what we're actually going to be learning about, which is really probably why you came here. So what you can expect is that as we get through this challenge, each day you're going to be getting this kind of main topic with some things to investigate underneath. And the first thing that's important to do is start with ourselves and start with our own identity and reflecting on our own biases. And then we start broadening that a bit and talking about things related to privilege and about why racing is challenging for some. And here's why talking about that is challenging. And then into how we've learned all this to begin with, from whatever lens we're looking through. Where is all of this from? And then we start to look at maybe more specifically for Michigan and some of the things that are really related more specifically to us, ending in this idea of action and this idea that once we have this learning and once we're continuously in this process of growth, what do we do with it? And this is those last several days ending in a summit of inspired action. So again, plug in as much as you can. If you miss a couple of days, and then either skip or catch up, like this is your journey, and it's okay, right? If you don't do exactly everything that's in this, it's really just more about, have you open space for yourself to be learning in this process. You're not graded, there's no tests at the end, but we do hope that it creates great change at multiple levels. And so first, again, we're starting with ourselves, and then maybe we'll start to have conversations, or we already are, with people that are around us. So people in our work teams, people in our families, our friend groups, things like that. But organizationally, there are all sorts of great organizations in our community, like the Midland County Inclusion Council, or our Cultural Awareness Coalition. There's all sorts of really great groups that are already working in these areas. Companies making this a priority in their company mission. And so all these things interplay with each other. And certainly some things that people learn from their workplaces can trickle down to their own personal sense of awareness and action. But certainly our own awareness and action can impact the people broader than us as well. So I love this lens of this me, we, and us, and how it's not just at the individual level, it's not just at the organizational or community level. This work is happening everywhere in between and interchangeably. And I think it's just, to me, really inspiring to think about what can happen from work like this being done. And so the last thing we're going to do with you is to get a little bit of your aspirations. And so while you're pondering all of this, we're going to go back and do one more Menti. We'll populate this and share this with you later as well. And what we'd like you to consider is this following question. Let's say a miracle happened and you woke up one morning and your biggest and best dreams of equity has been realized in this world in any way that you maybe don't see that happening now. So you wake up and it's like game on. You know, the moment you open your eyes that something is different, that everything is different. This biggest and best dream is now here. Please consider one word responses or a little phrase for each of these things. What's different? How do you feel about that difference? And then the final question here is, are you active or passive in what happened to make this dream come true? So get a little picture of that in your mind. If this biggest, best dream of equity is now here, you open your eyes and it's like, bam, it happened. We're going to go back to the same Menti poll that we just took. You could, if you want to, open this up again and scan it again, or you can just wait until I go here, and in your phone, it'll ask you to go to the next slide. So here's where you're populating your answer to this. Biggest and best dream of equity. What's different? How do you feel? And are you active or passive in this? Start to see our responses come in. Amberly, tell me what you're noticing.
Active and peace, relief, justice, respect, no more colorblindness. I saw, let's see. I have a little older eye, so I got to make it a little bigger. Income equity, togetherness, respect, barriers removed, excitement, happy, representation, freedom for everyone, relaxed and hopeful, peaceful, the end of violence.
What a great aspirational future, isn't it? Yes. We have one more minute to go here. Please continue to populate this because this is important for us to share our collective vision of this ideal future. Because how do we know what we're working toward until we see it? Now we see this is what we are working toward. And how are we going to get there? What are we going to do? Well, you signed up for an equity challenge. So here we go, friends. At the end of the challenge, what you will know is that we are going to have some great conversation with these four people. Kimberly and I are looking forward to having a chat with Dr. Amy Beasley and Jimmy Green and DeAndre Hogan and Dr. Gina Wilson. And we are really looking forward to hearing their inspiration as we finish our 10-day challenge, but really continue along our journey, this work together. I'm going to stop my share, friends. We are at 12:30. Thank you for coming today. Thank you. Excited because today you're going to get the email from United Way with your first challenge. Enjoy digging into the content. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Thank you.